Hello, hello, hello. This is Dr. Troy.
And I'm Ben-Jamin Toy.
We're broadcasting from the Cohesion Culture headquarters in beautiful Charleston, South Carolina, where even when it rains, the sun still shines.
You're going to hear real-time stories from leaders confessing their most crucial or recent experiences in business.
Learn what their cost them, steps they took to fix it, and how they planned
to not do that one again. What's up, cohesive leaders? Joined in the studio today, I'm Ben-Jamin. We got Trevor with us, filling in for Dr. Troy, and our guest today, Jay Poulton. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Awesome. We love to start off every program getting to know you and helping our audience get to know you a little bit better. So if you would, Jay, share something that is not on your resume or LinkedIn bio. So something they would not find in a normal Google or AI search, even if they were looking for you.
I keep a lot of stuff out there, that's for sure. So AI is pretty good at gleaming everything from the internet. But one of the things about me that not a lot of people know is that one of my favorite things I've ever done, it's probably not out there, was travel and record a film that I did for a not-for-profit that I worked for in the Congo. So that's one of my favorite and most memorable moments that's not out there. I worked for the Society of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, if you can believe that. And I went and I filmed a video that was reporting on a project that we were ending in the Congo related to maternal mortality. That was a pretty cool moment that not a lot of people know about me that I'm pretty proud of.
Wow. But is that out there? Is that documentary and in that video out there, though? They don't know it's you that did part of that.
You can find it. It's quite obscure. The thing you can find out there. It's quite obscure thing. But yeah, I'd be surprised if AI found that one.
That'd be funny.
How long ago did you do that?
Yeah. That was right before the pandemic in 2020.
Okay.
It was before I started doing what I currently do right now. That was kind of like the last thing I did in the before jumping into this current thing that I do now. So yeah, that was the last little moment.
Awesome. So Jay, we'd also then love to know who you are as a person. So values that you esteem to have, or that you have, behavior traits or character traits that you say you have, or others would say if you left the room. So who do you what identity-wise, avoid any roles or hats you wear, but just who is Jay?
I think I'm an extremely empathetic person, which is the reason why I am doing what I do today. I've always been that. I remember winning a camp counselor kind of council when I was at a camp as a kid. I won like most nicest kid who was always willing to help out others. And that kind of thing has stuck with me throughout my entire life. I think it has guided a lot of what I do throughout my life, and comes from, I think, from my folks, who were just always very kind and very understanding people themselves, and always tried to steer me in the right direction, even if they were boomer parents and weren't always pushing and always there at the time when you needed them. I think that hands-off kind of thing gave me a good appreciation of what makes a good person. And one of the other things that's not out there, I just thought of about me that I think define who I am, was I grew up in Montreal, Quebec, and in 1995, the province tried to separate from Canada. And it was a big thing. And right before when the vote was to go, before that day, it was either yes or no. So if you wanted them to stay in Canada, it was like, no, don't separate. Yes, separate. So there was a big rally of 1 million people in downtown Montreal. I went there, and one of those moments was I saw a yes sign, meaning yes to separate. I tore it down. I started jumping and stepping on it. And a guy came up to me and said, hey, don't do that. We're not about that here. And that moment really taught me a lot of empathy and a lot of how to look at both sides of the picture. I think that kind of has passed throughout the majority of my life as well.
It's an awesome lesson.
Yeah.
Okay, empathy. What else describes you? Or are you just the big ball of empathy that people see? What else do they see of you? Are there any other character traits?
Oh.
Oh.
I'm a bit stubborn. My wife would call me stubborn. My friends would call me a great friend, but also that someone who likes to stay inside and not do a lot of things. I'm pretty much a homebody, that kind of person. But great sense of humor. I think a great sense of humor is how a lot of people would define me. And yeah, I think those are some great moments. My stubbornness does come out at times when, it goes against that empathy side of things at times when I take a particular path in life and say that's the way I'm going to do this. And I think that stubbornness does come out. But I'm always willing to try new things and never will say no to something if it sounds like a lot of fun. For Christ's sake, I went to the Congo on a lark when somebody said, "Hey, you want to do a film?" Sure.
Yeah.
Let's go to the Congo and film something. When every website said, "Don't go. Don't go. It's not safe." I mean, I first got there, I got off the plane, and there was a guy on top of another plane without his shirt off. It felt like it was a moment from Indiana Jones. And the car that came to pick me up had an AK-47 that was crossed out, meaning we're safe. We don't have guns. Leave us alone. So it's quite a moment. Yeah.
Wow.
So I'm always willing to try and have fun out there. Yeah.
That's great. So empathy, stubborn, those are all things that probably a lot of us have those traits also. So tell us more about your roles now. What are you doing in your current role? Maybe a little bit about what brought you to that role.
So I'm someone who I maybe get bored very easily in what I do, and I always like to have new challenges. So I started out my career. I went to journalism school. I had no idea what I wanted to do, and a friend of mine knew that my dad had worked for the Montreal Canadiens. So I grew up around the Montreal Canadiens hockey club. If you know anything about hockey, it's the biggest team in the NHL. And he said, "Hey, you want to write a book?" I said, "Sure." So after that turned out I wrote books for until 8-9 years. So you've Googled my name on top of things, you'll find me as a writer of many books. So I've always tried to find something new and exciting, new and challenging. So after that, I joined into communications, which kind of led to what I do right now. So you can call me the accent coach. That's my title, where you'd find me. But I also teach people communications, accent training, leadership training as well around the world. So I do that. I've been doing that since 2021, since I gave up my old career full time doing films with the ecology place. Bad hats wanted to get to something that I do myself, and this is what led me to what I'm doing now.
What kind of books did you write?
Many kinds. Over 35 books. I wrote books about mainly sports. It was a sports publishing company that I had. It was my company that I ran with a partner. And I wrote mostly hockey. I wrote baseball, Olympics. I even wrote some books under a pseudonym. So over 35 books that I wrote back then. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. It was my own business, and I had a lot of fun doing it. That's for sure. My kids love it to this day. All those books that you see up there, if you're watching this on video, are all mine up there. All of those.
That's awesome.
Wow.
That's awesome. And that's actual true old writing, not promptings and getting parts back. And you actually wrote those. It's incredible. You did the research.
My record, I did one book in 3 weeks. That was my record. I never left the house. I just sat in front of the computer and just doggedly smashed that thing out, for sure. It was a lot of fun.
Well, Jay, love to I know you prepared for this. Love to now transition to find out what is the that you came prepared to share with us. Be specific on what it was. Paint the picture if you need to. But we want to find out what happened, and then I'll ask some follow-up questions once you tell the story of what the actual is. So hold off on saying what you changed and did with it. Those are the questions we'll bring up later.
Okay. There's many uh-ohs that I was thinking about and going through in this before coming on with you guys and thinking about those things. That's the hard part of choosing one particular that would resonate and that would give us a good conversation topic. But one of the was I was fired very early on from one of my positions that I held previously. 100% deserved. And that moment that moment where I was let go, totally warranted after finding out and going through that process of the grieving and looking back and letting go of the anger, that of losing that position really spurred me on towards what I am doing today. I think I learned so much from my failure at that position and what I wanted to do with my life and what I didn't want to do with my life at that moment.
All right, I want to dive into that change, but are you willing to share the circumstances that led to the firing? Is that something that you're willing to talk about? Mm-hmm. Okay, because we have folks that are working and those types of things may happen. We want to okay.
Yeah, without naming the place, the circumstances were I was hired as a communications manager for an organization, for an international sporting organization, I will say. And I just did not fit into the culture immediately. It was undergoing a lot of challenges at the time. And I tried, and everything I did, it seemed to fail to make an impact or to make a connection with the people there. So after my 6 months probation, I was let go. And it was supposed to be a huge turning point for me in my career because my kids were quite young and I was looking, because my publishing company after 2008 failed because of the wonderful market that was in 2008, if you remember that. So I had to switch gears because I had a young family and I had to get a real job. So quote unquote, a real job. And so that led me to try and gain a new position with new authority that I could succeed in quite quickly. But I wasn't ready for that in that moment. In that position and that job, I was too junior in both experience and mentality. And that led to me just not doing very well at it, floundering the entire time. Everything I seemed to do seemed to fail. So it was a great learning experience. Looking back on it, it kind of led me to where I am today.
Okay. Now, does any part of, because sometimes not being a good culture fit ultimately is a good thing. You find out that you didn't have to change or alter yourself to be a good fit there. Now, by any chance, did the stubbornness or the a lot of empathy somehow keep you from being the culture fit because of how the company operated? Was that a rub at all?
Can you say that question again? It kind of glitched there for a second.
So, not having a culture fit can be a good thing because you don't want to change who you are. By chance, your empathy level and your stubbornness, did any of that contribute to the lack of culture fit?
Well, that's a good question. That is a good question. I think maybe I was trying to over empathize with everybody, which is not a good thing in trying to please everybody in a place that functions at a high level. So I think maybe that people-pleasing kind of attitude that I had went against the culture of that place, which was high-achieving, international, during a time that was quite challenging for the organization. So I think that was probably that's a good way to point that. I was just trying to people please and trying to fit in and trying to, instead of challenging the norms and challenging things and challenging the way things were done, I maybe was trying to do and please too many people all at once.
My guess is that they probably love this.
That's a good one. Good question.
Thank you. The performance piece is surface level, move fast, and you might like to go a little deeper. would that make sense? The way that I hear it is that you like to be a little bit deeper in your conversations, the people pleasing, which has some pros and cons with it. Okay, so now I'd love to learn from the lessons. What did it cost you by having to be fired? What was the cost to you personally, professionally, socially, emotionally? What was the cost? What did you have to pay after this?
Pride. There was a lot of pride on the line at that moment. So the cost was quite high in terms of, this was the first time for me I had ever been let go, apart from a small crappy job when I was a lot younger that I really deserved to be fired for. This was the first big career kind of moment where it really truly hurt, because I'd left a previous job that I was doing very well in to take this risk. And that pride of people that knew me and didn't want me to leave that other job going into this one, kind of, to some people I lied about it, to some people I just didn't talk about it. So it cost a lot of pride for me in that moment. So I think that was the major cost for me. But what came out of it on the other end, looking back, it had to happen to get me to where I am today. But that, I think I paid a lot in terms of my, call it male pride, call it what you will. Because I had the young family, because, a lot was riding on me. The wife wasn't working at the time. When was this? My son was just a couple of years old. My daughter would be on the way soon after that. So yeah, it was no, actually my daughter was around at that time. So yeah, I had 2 young kids to pay for. So there was a huge cost of pride.
So what did you do to be changed? Like, how did you then change, or did you just accept it? Like when you're now doing the next thing that you're going to, and you can feel free to talk about what you end up doing, but like it cost you that. Was there any change to it of who you operate as to move on?
I think in that moment, because there was a huge change for me, there was a big change of scenery in terms of, we moved cities and changed cities to go to where I live right now in Ottawa, Canada. And that was a huge change for me, because I started realizing that I had a voice and I needed to challenge things. Canada, I don't know if you know what 4-H in the United States, and 4-H is in Canada. It's a big organization for positive youth development, where I went there, became director of communications, and started my career on the started to turn things around after that. And the next place I went to was the Society of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. I was a director there. So it really spurred my career into different kind of areas, to have the confidence in myself finally to make those challenges and to use the voice that I was given to speak up. So I think that was a huge change for me, huge sea change, that no longer look back and no longer be shy for those things, and don't be intimidated that I too have a seat at the table and I too deserve to be there and have my voice heard. I think that was a big one for me.
So Jay, you mentioned that you went through the process after you got fired, where you felt grief, anger. Tell us more about that and walk us through how you feel like you handled that, and what you could have done differently during that process, because that could be part, I think, some of the most difficult part to overcome. To move beyond that, and that it takes that process you're referring to.
It is grief. It is loss. You are dealing with almost the loss of something you love. So a lot of people equate that to the loss of a loved one. And it does in some moments feel like that loss, especially if you're the person that the family relies on to bring in money. There is a huge amount of pressure. So that feeling really got to me in those moments. But I'm another thing for me is resilience. I've been quite resilient my entire life of bouncing back and moving on to something else and landing on my feet. And so I don't think I would have handled anything differently, to be honest, because I did go through the process of the grieving. You have to go through that sort of thing. I shared it with people around me who knew me best, that I was grieving. And that a very wise man once told me that grief brought to community is cut in half. Grief kept to yourself stays inside and rots you from the inside. So by bringing that out to the people I knew best and loved, who wouldn't judge me, I think got me through that and moved me on to the next thing. For me, it was always, okay, what's next? What's next? What's next? What's next? And so for me, it was always that. And I still live that kind of life today of what's next? What's my next challenge? That's what brought me into the books. That's what got me into those international communications. That's what brought me back into my own business today.
It's a great quote and mindset. What would you say to folks that said, well, it was only a 6-month job, you just need to move on? How do you handle that type of conversation or person?
That person, I would say, it was just a 6-month job, but I had put my heart and soul into that for those 6 months. And it's something I wanted to succeed. It was hard to say goodbye to, but like a bad relationship, sometimes it's necessary. And so I think it was a necessary goodbye in that moment. So I'm not going to get into a fight with anybody that says those kinds of things, but yeah, it was I put my heart, I wanted it to succeed. So I will grieve that moment, but I will move on from it and find my next challenge. I'm not going to hang on to things and wallow in self-pity for very long. I still wallow just a little bit in self-pity, but I move on pretty quick.
You know, that quote you share, I love also. But when you were talking about that, what came to mind for me was vulnerability. You had to be vulnerable to go and express that to the people you trusted to do that. How important is that part of it in the process? Vulnerability of it.
Oh my God, it's the most important thing I think we have as humans to make connection is vulnerability. So in those moments where you are down, if you don't allow yourself to be vulnerable, then you're toast. You're just going to wallow in self-pity. You're just going to let that feeling fester inside. I mean, if you've ever lost somebody in your life, and if you hold that stuff in, it's going to eat you alive. You have to be vulnerable with somebody to tell them that you're hurting. It's part of being human. It's part of what I try and teach people today. And when I talk to them, be a good communicator, you have to be vulnerable. You have to, which is why I wanted to do this podcast, because I have to be vulnerable about my moments so that people see that even those at the top do suffer from moments where they have to then, pick up their feet and keep on trucking or cowboy up or whatever kind of cliche moment you want to put to that. You have to be vulnerable, because that shows you're human and that shows you're just like everybody else. And therein lies the success. If you can't do that, it's going to be hard to succeed at anything.
Jay, I was recently informed of a difference in definition between transparent and vulnerability. What would you say is the difference from your perspective?
Transparent, there's a lack of trust there because you can see through it, but you don't have any substance to it. So if I'm being transparent with you, anytime anybody says that, let me be transparent with you, there's a lack of trust that I have. If someone shows me that vulnerability, it's real, it's genuine. Transparency, being is, I'm trying to look for a metaphor that would properly, get the difference between those two. One seems very real, the other one doesn't. Transparency seems fake, seems elusive, seems out there in the world, where vulnerability is the most human thing you can have. I mean, every bloody Shakespeare thing was about vulnerability. So that's just the essential nature of what it is to be human. So yeah, I think there's a big difference between those two as well. Just lacking the words.
Yep. I would say that would be a great way of explaining the way it was shared to me was transparent is giving the facts. Someone is comfortable with the situation that happened, even if it was a bad one. They're not providing any emotional context with it. Here's the situation. Here's what happened. The vulnerability includes the emotional connection and the journey with it. And, I thought that I was being great by being transparent. And I was realizing that I was not being vulnerable at all in situations. So that's been a journey that I've been on, for months now on trying to be vulnerable in situations, not just transparent, because I can compartmentalize, right? I want to tie some things together. It sounds like to me that when you got these newer jobs and the new careers after you got fired, you were accepted for who you are. You belong to those organizations, right? Based on your values and character traits, you were accepted and belong. We call that in our becoming a cohesive leader, owning your attributes. We have a power acronym, but owning your attributes and values. So you didn't have to change. So let's tie this into talking to we're going to say 20 something, early 30 somethings, folks that are working somewhere and are struggling with culture fit or owning their attributes and values, and what it ultimately meant for you to realize that you may have gotten fired because of your values and attributes, but you ultimately found something else different. So paint a picture or something they can take away from that story.
So I'm reminded a lot of some of the clients that I work with today who are in places, and some of the people that I've spoken to, powerful people around the world, high position jobs, and they come to me and they tell me about the anxieties that they feel in certain places. And one thing I've learned from a lot of those jobs, even the ones that I was doing well in, they were still filled with certain amounts of anxiety, is that my anxiety was trying to tell me something, and maybe your anxiety is trying to tell you something. I think that we no longer have to worry, well, in most cases, that there is a lion around the corner who's waiting to eat it. Anxiety, our anxiety is trying to warn us often, and it's a warning signal, and a lot of people don't realize that sometimes your anxiety is telling you, hey, you're not in the right place right now. And I think for me, even those positions where I did do well, my anxiety told me in some of those cases that all wasn't okay. So I think that's the one thing I want people to understand is, when I was there, my anxiety might have been telling me, things aren't working out. Jay, you're not fitting in here very well. But my pride kind of kept me there, and my stubbornness kept me trying and fighting. But they did me a favor and let me go in that moment. And that my anxiety was trying to tell me that probably way in advance. And a lot of the clients I speak to today who have a similar thing are like that.
So Jay, describe to me the symptoms or what you're calling the anxiety, because anxiety can feel and represent by different people, and they have different opinions of what anxiety is. So how would you describe the things internally that gave you those clues or warning signals?
It's the unease as you wake up. It's the unease on a Sunday night before you have to get up and go to work. It's the twisting of the gut as you're working on a project and it doesn't feel right. It's the strange interactions you have with other colleagues that just aren't gelling. When you get into the zone with anything you do, you're in the zone of that thing. And for me, it was more of just, there's this feeling, this weight on my shoulders that, oh, this project didn't go well, or this interaction with my boss didn't go well, and a lot of people come to that and say to themselves that, oh, it's me, I'm not doing so great, I'm trying, I'm doing this, what am I doing wrong? It's all internalized. But sometimes you got to look a little bit outward and say, maybe it's not just me, maybe it's where I am now. And for me, throughout my career, I've had those little moments where I've been like, you're not where you're supposed to be right now. I think you need to change. I think you need to get up and move, because even if it's working, even if it's going really, really well, and I've left places that have been going really, really well, your anxiety tells you this is not right for you right now. And for me, it's a feeling. And I think your listeners know when they have that moment and they're at work, or there's that thing that bugs them in their brain every day. That's the thing that's telling them something ain't right. Something ain't right. And they each know what that thing is.
And that's great advice. And that happens, as I hear you speaking about it, I think of trust your gut is how the terms that I put in. For our listeners, though, when they have those, when they're feeling that anxiety, that tightness in their, when they have to go to work the next day, whatever, who should they reach out to? What should they do to try to understand what's causing that, or how they can overcome it?
Ooh, that's a tough question. That depends on the person. A lot of people could reach out to a friend, and that's, or your partner in life. That's probably what I usually chose to do. A lot of people have coaches that they could reach out to, that they can go through these sorts of things. And some people come to me for accent coaching, yet I end up working with them on career coaching, and I've worked with some brilliant, wonderful people. One lady in particular, I tell you she was feeling that. She was feeling that she wasn't getting the right, like her boss wasn't taking her seriously. She was told she was too much. And there was this underlying anxiety with everything she did. She ended up staying there. It was just a reset of her mindset that we worked through, and that made her now being super successful in her career. So it's not always I need to leave. It's sometimes I need to reset my expectations of myself and my job into something that I can manage every day. So my personal experience was, let's go. I need to get out of here. Let's go find something else. Other people, it's just reframing their mindset into something that works for them. And that's a hard thing to do. And I got to give that lady kudos for doing that, because most people would choose to say, this isn't working, I need to go. She reset her mind and then is now achieving new heights of success.
I think it's important to note, though, that sometimes we get the feeling we when things are hard and it's challenging, and let's say it's something we're new, we can feel what we would say with the anxiety, and then something has to change, or I'm not cut out for it. But sometimes it's the mindset piece towards it, right? And I use the verbiage also, the gut, but also peace. I can have peace about it and it still be challenging, but I want to go forward with it, right? It's when it's not at peace and there's all these other circumstances, because I want folks to know that it's okay for things to be hard. That doesn't mean you have to give up. Like, there is a level of grit that we have to work towards, but that's where you have to balance that stubbornness, and where are we doing this to not be masochistic? What are we going to do to actually pursue with it? And I think that's a big part of the idea of understanding the mindset of what we're going towards, is that because you can be comfortable with where it's going, but just knowing that for this season, it's going to be challenging because it's brand new. I have a new boss. I have something going on. There's a new project. And every time it's hard doesn't mean you have to cut tail and run.
100%. For me, in those moments, I had put myself through all of those things, going through, okay, stick it through, get this project done. It took years to come to the final decision of going, okay, now it's my time to go. But it took years to get there, to stick through the bumps and the bruises until it was time to say, hey, I need to go do something else. Usually it's my own volition to say, this is my thing I need to go and do, not through some something that was going on in the office at the time. It was like, this is no longer my thing. I need to be somewhere else in my life and in my career. So this is what pushed me to do what I do today. It's okay, I'm not made for this thing anymore. Even though I was succeeding at my last position and there was no friction whatsoever, it was, you know what? I need to go off and do something else in my life and career.
Awesome. Jay, this has been a great conversation. I think there's a lot of great lessons here. And for listeners to know that there isn't a best practice here on which way to approach it. There's going to be differences, but to go back to your quote of community, having trusted advisors, the wisdom and multiple to counselors, having a counselor, because every situation you have to be able to weigh it by folks that maybe aren't vested in the outcome, right? Or have a dog in the fight is very helpful. We've talked about you can learn from mentors or mistakes, but when you learn from mentors, you learn from their mistakes. And so it's important to have someone to talk to when making these types of decisions, because they might just say, hey, that diamonds on the acres of diamonds are just past there, a little bit more digging. Other times, okay, this circumstance, you got to go. It's not healthy, right? So there isn't a magic bullet or cheat code to doing it every single time the same way.
I love that, because so many people need a sounding board because you get stuck in your own cycles inside your head, and someone else outside can provide a different perspective for you to look on. And normally and usually we all have the answers that we need for ourselves, and we need to come to those on our own. Advice is often sometimes, I did an ICF coaching certificate, which I haven't finalized yet and gotten my piece of paper yet. But one of the biggest things that we discussed was you need to come to those resolutions yourself. The person giving you the advice, if they give you advice, you're always able to then go to them and say, that was bad advice. Why'd you give me that advice? You have to come to those resolutions yourself. And that will then lead you to the place where you're happier because you came to those. We all have the answers. It's just sometimes we need somebody to listen to and talk those things through, and then without bias. So that's the hardest part, is to find somebody who can help you with that.
Dr. Troy actually likes to say a grounding board instead of a sounding, so it's not coming right back at you, but you can also test to make sure that how it sits and how it lands versus just getting your thoughts coming right back at you. So semantics, but he loves to always make that distinction of sometimes we just need them to, okay, am I being crazy or not type of deal. So
Yep.
Jay, what's a question? You did a lot of preparation, you're prepared. What's a question you probably had for us that you thought, or what's a question you thought we would have for you that we have not asked yet?
Okay. I caught that. It broke up a little bit,
Right.
but what's the question for you guys that I would have, right?
No, what's a question you thought we would ask that we did not ask?
Was that good enough of an uh-oh, Jay?
Ooh.
Don't you have a bigger uh-oh?
I would, do you have another bigger uh-oh? And I would actually not want to ask that question because that was a great uh-oh. Like, we got a lot of good content here. So normally we ask you, I mean, if you have another story, I'd love to hear it. But from a time sake, like that, it didn't matter. Like, that was such good content from that uh-oh, because we truly love talking about owning your attributes and values. And I truly feel that you owning who you are has helped you move to what you're currently doing. So I'd love for you to actually just take the next little bit. How do folks find you socially or professionally? And with the Accent Coach, what is it that you're currently doing, and how do you use those skills and behaviors and values in the workplace now?
So yes, so thank you very much for that. I am the Accent Coach. You can find me on all the socials under Jay the Accent Coach, or on another website, theaccentcoach.com. So I currently work with people around the world, literally around the world. I have clients in Taiwan, India, Australia, all over the world. And it's so common to see the same things throughout the most of people. So I help them with their communications. So whether they want to reduce their accent and sound like a standard North American accent like you and me, or they want to improve how they communicate. So those two things often go hand in hand. And what I see from a lot of folks is that there's a lack of confidence in the way that they use their voices. So whether you speak a second language or not, there's a lack of confidence in the way that most people use their voices because they don't think about that sort of thing. I was born with a voice and I'm going to use it because I can. Well, there is a strategy behind how you use your voice, because you look at the best speakers out there in the world and just Google Steve Jobs and then watch any speech by Bill Gates, and you will see the difference between those two guys. One was known for his speech style, and the other one seems like a robot. I'll let the listeners figure out who's who. And I often teach people those things. Often, yes, I'll teach you how to make a TH and an R sound, but for the most part, it's how to be a good communicator in the English language and even in their own native language, because a lot of these things that I teach people really translate across. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. I have a blast with those people that I work with, but the lessons that I learned, I bring back those stories all the time with my clients who don't feel they're heard in those business meetings, who feel that other people take their ideas and translate it in a way and then they're heard, but their ideas aren't. I call it the authority gap. There's this space in between the expertise you bring and what the room actually hears. And so this is what I do with a lot of my clients, is help them bridge that authority gap so that their voices are finally heard.
That's awesome. Jay, thank you so much for your time today. And we're going to end this program like we do all of our Cohesion Culture programs with a reminder that you don't have to know everything.
You just need to be teachable.